안녕하십니까 여러분들.
Hello, how are you?
슬라이드. 제가 그 샬롯 저와 와이프는 이곳에 꼭 한번 오고 싶었습니다.
Me and my wife really wanted to come to Charlotte,
개인적으로 굉장히 감사드립니다.
and I
제가 사는 곳은
thank you for inviting us.
지금 여기 사진에서 보이듯이
Where I live,
밴쿠버 섬, 말하자면 캐나다에서도 서쪽 끝에 있는 밴쿠버,
it's west side of Canada,
그런 섬에서 살고 있습니다.
Vancouver area, and then the very far west. This is like an island.
정확히 같다 그래요. 남한의 한 절반 좀 안 되고 3분의 1보다는 좀 큰, 꽤 큰 섬이죠.
And this is a pretty big island, maybe about a half of the size of South Korea.
제가 그 샬롯에 오기 전에 샬롯에 대해서 어떤 곳인가
And before I come to Charlotte, I studied about the Charlotte a little bit.
그다음에 아메리칸 에어라인의 헤드쿼터가
The
있는
Bank of America and American Airlines
어느
headquarters.
도시보다도 그 신교도 프로테스탄트가 많이 자리 잡았던 곳.
And
그걸
also
보면서 제가
where the
속으로 여기가
Protestant
바로 true 아메리카다.
settled in this area.
어젯밤
And I thought this is a
11시에
real
비행기가
America
랜딩을
in Charlotte.
창밖으로
And I
쳐다보고
came around 11 p.m.
오늘 또
yesterday,
길거리를 다니면서 느낀 첫 소감은
and
깨끗하다.
I
네,
realized it's a clean
역시
city,
깨끗한
clean.
곳에 사시는 여러분들은 참 깨끗해 보이십니다.
And you all look very clean
저도 마음이
living in this clean
이번 기회에
city.
며칠이지만 있으면서 깨끗해지기를
And I hope me
바랍니다.
and my wife also get cleaned while I'm staying here in Charlotte.
불과 4번의 강의 가지고 여러분들에게 제가 감히
It's going to be only
건강
4
장수의
lectures.
비결을 논하려고 하는데 여러분들
And
어떻게 생각하세요? 이게 가능할까요?
What do you think? Do you think it will be possible to discuss this
저는
in
뭐 저의
4
그 어떤
lecture?
철학도 아니고 저의 주관이 아니고 바로 최신 과학적인 근거를 가지고 여러분들과
And this is not
얘기를
just
나누려고
my
하는데요.
thoughts, but
여러분들
I
한번
am going to
서론으로
back
질문을
my
제가
lecture
해드릴게요.
with scientific
무엇이 우리
studies.
인생의 운명을 가름합니까?
What can
건강에
decide our
무엇일까요, 그게?
fate?
네, 이제 그 초이스를 둘로 좁혀서
I'm going to give 2
유전자인가요?
choices.
아니면
Is it
우리의
going to be the
생활
gene
습관인가요?
or the habit?
자, 고맙습니다. 대부분이 생활 습관이라고 얘기하시니까 저는 이제 돌아가야 될 것 같은데.
Most of you guys already
벌써부터
told
정답을 다 알고
habits,
계시면
so
제가
you already
무슨 얘기를
know the
하겠어요?
answer. So I
하지만
have to go back
모든
now.
사람들이 사실은 많은 사람들이 마음속에 유전자를 버릴 수가 없어요.
But many people won't
아시다시피
give up the gene.
20세기가 맞춰갈 무렵에 이 인류 과학이
And
이 만들어낸 가장 큰 업적 중에 하나가 뭡니까? 이 유전자를 분석한
the
거예요.
human gene
인간의
analysis
유전자를
is one of
분석한
the most
그래서 그
accomplished
분석을 해서 저렇게 지도로
task
나열을 했죠.
that,
그 유전자
that human
지도라고
being did.
합니다만
And they
그걸
made
하고
the map
보니까
of the
여기
gene.
보시다시피 1번부터 있는 염색체들 하나하나에 다 모든 질병의 유전인자가 들어가 있어요.
There is a
무슨 얘기냐면
specific,
모든 질병이
disease
유전자의
connected
변이로
to a
일어나는데
specific
그 병들이 다
gene.
유전자 안에 이미 등록되어 있다 이겁니다. 그런데 누구는 어떤 병에 걸리고 누구는
So
평생 그런 병에
these are already
걸리지 않고
registered in the gene, but some people
사실은 이
get the disease,
지놈
some people live
프로젝트라고 하는
healthy.
이 거대한 이 과학적인 어치브먼트가 끝날 때쯤에
And when
과학자들은
this
그렇게
scientific
생각했어요.
achievement is
이제
about to
우리는
be
모든 병을
end,
다 고칠 수 있게 됐어.
you know, the
왜냐면
human
유전자만 바꾸면
technology and the medical
암에서도
science
유전자만
can
바꾸면 암이
treat
감기 났듯이 없어지게 돼 있어요.
treat
그렇기 때문에
those specific
유전자를 우리가
diseases.
극복한 이상 이제 모든 병은
And
해결할
once
수 있겠구나
human being
했는데
accomplished, you
알고
know, the
보니까
analysis of the total gene,
유전자가
you know, they would
고정돼
be able
있지
to
않다는 것이죠.
cure those disease
유전자는
by treating the gene.
전기불처럼 꺼지는 때가 있으면 켜지는 때가 있어요.
But these genes,
우리가
like
영원히 그
electricity,
스위치를
there's
끌 수도
times
있고
that the gene is
영원히
turned
켜둘 수도
on
있어요.
and the gene is turned off.
그거를 다룬 학문이 바로 유전학이 20세기를 거치면서
And this
정점을
genealogy,
찍었다면
the
21세기 들어서
human,
생긴
you know,
학문이
gene
바로 후생 유전학,
study,
영어로는 에피제네틱스라고 하는
and
학문이에요.
these days
그
it's called
에피라는 말이
epigenetics.
말하듯이 에피는 뭐냐면 주변이라는 뜻이.
Epi means surroundings,
에피가
around.
말하듯이 그 유전자의 주변에 어떤 환경이 그 유전자를 펴기도 하고
So what
끄기도
kind
하는
of environment surrounding the gene
이제 한국말은
will
후생 유전학,
change,
그러니까
you know,
태어나고 난
the
다음에
fate of
일어나는
that
유전의
gene.
변화를 공부하는 학문이죠. 그 유전학에 대한 후생 유전학이 바로 이 그림 하나로 다 해결이 되는
So
거예요.
this picture explains the
그걸 제가
epigenetics,
여러분들에게
what
알기 쉽게
epigenetics is about.
설명드리겠습니다. 이제 컵이 두 개가 있어요.
There are
물이
two
담겨져
cups.
있어요.
There are
여러분들
water
보시기에
inside,
오른쪽에 컵에 물이 높죠.
and right side the water
얘기는
level
왜
is
그래요?
higher, right?
어떤 질병의 유전자들이 그 사람은 태어날 때보다 부모에게 더 많이 가지고 태어났기 때문에
Because that people was
우리가 이렇게
born
가정을
with
합시다.
more
살면서
genetic,
우리의
you know,
생활 습관,
factors
나쁜 환경, 어떤
that can
정신적인
cause
스트레스,
the certain type of
사회적인
disease. You know, the people was
지위,
born with it.
이런 거에
More, you
따라서
know,
우리의
higher chance of it.
생활 요인이 달라지겠죠. 그러면서
But because of the
그런 나쁜
habits
요인이
and the
들어갈수록
environment,
그 물은 점점 높아지고
you know,
더
the
물의
things will
레벨이
change.
컵을 넘치는 순간 병이 걸리는 걸로 가정합시다.
And let's say, you know, once the more of the habits and the genetics comes into the cup, and if the water flows out of the cup, then let's say the person will get the disease.
높은
So
데서
person on the right side has higher chance of getting that disease to begin with.
그게 아니죠. 결국은요. 무슨 얘기를 하려고 하냐면 후생 유전학에서 얘기하고 있는 습관, 라이프 스타일, 좋은 습관.
So what I'm trying to say is what epigenetics will tell about the
아무리 유전적으로
good
자기가
habits or
건강한
bad
집안에서,
habits,
장수 집안에서 건강한 유전자를 가지고 태어났어도
and
한순간
you know,
질병에 걸릴
even
수밖에
though you
없어요.
are born with the good genes, your habit is not good, you know, you're likely
많이 가지고
get to the
태어났다
disease.
하더라도 그의 습관이
But even if the person who was born with more genetic factors to get the disease, if that person can keep the good habits, you know, then he or she can control the likelihood of getting that disease.
결국 정답은 유전자가 모든 병의 근원이지만
So the gene is the source of all the disease.
변화시키냐
But what changes a person's life is the attitude, the habits can change the likelihood of getting or not getting the disease. Then what kind of habits or we should keep?
여러분들 아시겠는데 American Heart Association이라고 하는 세계에서 가장 큰
So this is a publication from American Heart Association.
일할 때는 심장외과 의사로 일했기 때문에
And I was working as a heart surgeon in Korea.
거의 참석했어요.
So I participated, you know, the seminar run by American Heart Association,
37,000명까지 한꺼번에 참석하니까.
and about 37,000 people participate in that seminar.
공항에 나가 보면 출발할 때 그다음에 끝나고 돌아갈 때 보면 공항이 다 거기에
And when we have the seminar, you know, when I go to that airport, you know, all the heart surgeons, you know, fills the airport during that time. This is a circulation, the publication, periodicals.
여기 얘기해요. 미국의 국민들은 전 세계에서 가장
The American people,
가장 잘 먹고
they are most well fed. You know, they have good the medical system and facilities, but why do they have more disease?
2024년까지의 저런 병들이 진행되는 걸 보면 병이냐면요. 관상동맥 질환이에요.
So this is you know, heart failure, those sclerosis,
이라고 심방세동 그런 심장의 병들,
and heart
심장혈관의
disease.
병들이 점점 증가하는 거예요.
It goes up.
됐을 때는 그런 식으로 많아질 거라는
So it's saying when it becomes 2050, it will go up like that.
근데 그것만 보면은 그런가 보다 하게 되는데 사실은 그게 그런이 아니고요.
That's not the conclusion.
주도하는 세 가지 나쁜 건강 습관이 거기에 있었다는
There
거예요.
are three bad
뭐냐면
habits.
가장 나쁘게는 poor diet,
One is poor diet,
건강하지 못한 식생활.
just eating, junk food.
여러분들이 별로 생각하지 못하셨겠지만 inadequate sleep.
Second is inadequate sleep,
수면.
not having enough sleep.
부족할 수도 있고 수면을 제때 하지 않고 낮에 한다든지 너무 늦게 한다든지. 그다음에는 운동. 사실은
And inadequate exercise.
개념이 나온 다음에 운동은 국민들이 막 운동이 나빠지진 않는.
But a lot of people exercise these days, so
효과가 그렇게 좋지 않습니다.
exercise is okay. But those three are the main factors: the poor diet, inadequate sleep, and inadequate exercise.
혈관 질환으로 죽기 때문에
And people die with, the sclerosis.
운명과도 같은 그것을 조절할 수 있는 바로 세 가지 습관이라. 오늘은 제가 이번에 세 가지를 다루면서 맨 먼저 음식에 대해서.
So today we are going to deal with those three things, and I'm going to talk about the food, nutritions. What kind of food, how to eat.
여러분들 무엇을 먹을까 얘기하면은
So what do you eat?
너무나 잘 알아요. 뭘 먹어야 되는지 이미 정답이 나와 있어요.
We all know what are the good things to eat, right?
강의가 들으시고 결론을 내리실 게 뭐냐면 무엇을 먹느냐가 중요한 것보다는 무엇을 어떤 마음가짐으로 먹느냐가
So
굉장히
more than, what do you eat, what's more than important is what do you eat is what kind of mindset do you eat the food? If you really don't like to eat vegetables and you hate it, but if you eat it, like forcefully with a lot of stress, then it's not ideal. It's not going to be very good for your body. So instead of, what, more important thing is how, what kind of mindset, with what mindsets do you consume the good food?
우리가 뭘 먹을까라는 거에 대해서 두 가지 선택밖에 없어요.
We have two choices what to eat.
두 가지 선택, 극단적인 선택. 하나는 창세기 1장
The first
20절에 나오는
is what is recommended by the Creator in Genesis 1:29.
만약에 여러분들이 창조주를 믿으신다면
If you believe in God,
29절이 그냥 소설 속에 나오는 얘기가 아니라면은 분명히 저대로 따를 때는 질병도 치유돼야 되고
and it says,
질병도
every plant yielding seed, every tree with the seed in its fruit.
그럼에도 불구하고
If you believe in God, if you follow that,
결론 짓지 왜 그럴까요?
you should be without any disease. But then that's not the true, right?
우리의 건강은 총체적인 결과물이에요.
Because our health
음식 하나 잘 먹었다고
is
해서
not
나머지
not
거는
just
그냥
depending on
대강해도
what you eat, but it's
영양
more of
없다. 이렇게 곤란해요.
a complicated, all combined, all factors combined result.
통이 있죠. 와인 같은 거 저장하는.
There's like a big
플레이트가 한
bottle
10개
that
이렇게
stores like a
끼워서
wine.
만드는데 그 플레이트 하나하나가 여러분들 삶의 습관이에요.
There are a lot of plates that's consisting that big jar, and each of those plates are your habits of your life. Like exercise, how much sleep do you get?
그런데 유독 한 가지 플레이트가 길다고 해서 즉 채식을 진짜 완벽하게 했다고 해서
But
나머지
just by doing a perfect vegetarian diet, that doesn't mean that you're gonna have the perfect health.
그 종합적인 면에서 우리가 건강을 생각을 해야지 나는 이것을 하나 함으로
So we have
내가
to think
건강해져야 된다라고 생각하면
everything together, not just one thing.
두 번째는 이게 건강에 좋은 음식이라고 했었으니까 나는 이것을 기필코 먹어야 된다고 자기 자신과 싸우시면
And you're not supposed to fight with yourself to eat that food that was recommended as healthy.
세계 두 번의 대전이 지나면서 사실은 2차 대전 때 가장 큰
There was two big wars.
숙제가 뭐였냐면 어떻게 하면 청소년들을 건강하게 빨리 키워서
And in the second war, the second great war of the Second World War, the project was how to raise the youth healthily with what type of food so they can grow well and they can become a good soldier. That was one of the projects back then they studied.
상황에서는 우리가 인간의 가장 1번 아이디어란 에스펙트가 뭐라고 그래요? 체 건강이라고 따졌던
In the like a war situation, the one of the ideal aspects is the health of the body, so they can become a good soldier.
건강으로 인해서 결국은
And because of that,
1900년대 초에
the America
저런 끝 피라미드라고
adapted,
하는
the food pyramid that kind of gives ideal growth.
이 그림에서 보시면 여기에 나온 것들은 미국민들이 옛날부터 먹던 것들이 안 먹던 거를 집어넣는 적도
But these are all the food that was consumed by the Americans from before, from past.
또 마시고 그랬죠. 그런데 이게 무엇인가 이겁니다. 왜 이게 이제 와서 문제라고 하느냐 이거예요. 무엇이냐 하면요.
But what is the problem with it?
매일같이 낙농품과 고기를 어느 정도씩은 꼭 먹어야 된다는 데가 문제.
The problem is it's saying that you have to eat meat or dairy product, a certain amount every day.
너희가 야채를 먹었으면 그만큼 고기도 먹어야 된다.
If you had vegetables, then you also have to have some proteins, some meat. So that's what's not, not good about this chart. So from like a kindergarten, you have to drink 2 cups of milk every day.
여기에 대해서 여러분들 어떻게 생각해요? 이걸 누가 만들었냐면
It was made by the USDA, the US Department of Agriculture.
왜 만들었을까요?
Why did they make this?
사실 미국은 양쪽 그 코스탈 에어리아를 빼면 나머지 내륙 쪽은 다 낙농업이에요.
So in America, except the coastal areas, the inland, they do a lot of agricultural. Because the agriculture was number one project of the country. So I think it was promoted by agricultural department to have more milk and meat. This is Journal of American College of Cardiology.
의학에서 가장 피를 가지고 있고 가장 많은 돈을 벌고
And
가장 권위가 높은
it has most authority and most well, known. They published a paper.
전체 성인 20세 이상 70.
And this is over 20 years, under 79 U.S. adults.
생각을 해보세요. 미국 전체군 국민들
all, American citizens.
뭐냐면요.
What they measured
푸드 피라미드가 본격적으로 시작하기 전
is before the food pyramid
시작하고
was
난 뒤에
promoted
10년이 지난 다음에
and
사람들을
after the
공개했어요.
food pyramid was
어떤 일이
promoted,
일어났을까요?
what happened?
지금 이 아래쪽에 빨간 거는 심장
On the red
삼동맥 질환,
is
심장마비예요.
the cardiovascular disease.
가파르게 진-
It went up, right? The occurrence of it went up.
당뇨병이.
And on the right is diabetes.
왜 밸런스 다이어트?
Diabetes goes up.
보다는 프로테인을 먹였는데 왜 당뇨병은 많아지고 왜
And they promoted the balanced diet, by agricultural department. And why does the rate of occurrence of those disease went up?
국민들은 어떻게 했어요? 담배도 더 많이 끊었어요.
Because during that time, they lowered the smoking rate and they lowered the cholesterol and then they controlled the blood pressure better.
이 세 가지 인자가 이 아래 있는 두 가지 병의 직접적인 원인인데
But those three things are the main cause of these two diseases on the bottom. But why, even though those factors, they control the smoking, cholesterol, and blood pressure, how come the rate of occurrence of those diseases went up?
시행해 본 아이디어란 푸드 피라미드. 이런 논문이 발표되자 미국 정부는
So after that paper was published,
바꿔요.
they changed
어떻게 바꾸냐면
the food pyramid.
마이 피라미드. 왜 마이 피라미드가 됐어요?
And they changed it to the My Pyramid
이 요지는 그겁니다.
instead of
너의
food
건강은
pyramid.
네가 책임져.
Your health
너희들에게
is
잘
depend
먹여줬으면
on
이제부터는
you.
거기에 상응하는 운동을 해야 돼.
you have to
결국은
exercise.
운동 부족. 왜 그런가 하면 고기에는 칼로리가 높은 지방이 있는데 그걸 먹고
And in the meat, there is a fat, with high calories. But if you don't exercise, then, you're going to get the disease. So the government changed the stance from food pyramid to My pyramid.
이런 식으로 미국 정부에서 한 게 아니고 그거를 정당화시키자 많은 학자들이 그런 논문 시작합니다.
And
이제 미국 국민의 건강은 끝.
a lot of scholars write the papers about that.
국민들을 가이드한다면 미국의 이게 대표적인 하버드 보건학과
This is published by the Harvard University, the Public Health Department.
근거도 없이 과학적인 근거도 없이 육고기를 먹어야지만 된다라고 하는.
So it says, without the scientific evidence, the American government promoting, eating the dairy and meat
그런 개념을 없애버리고
was wrong. That's what it says.
음식은 없다. 뭐만 있다? 밸런스를 유지해서 먹어야 된다라는 개념으로 얘기했는데.
So instead of saying, there's good food or bad food, the food pyramid recommended the balanced food.
주장하는 벤트라라 이거예요. 이거는 굉장히 비꼬는 거죠. 인더스트리에서 로비해가지고.
And it kind of says, make fun of the pyramid, the food pyramid.
장려시켰다 이겁니다. 뭔지 아시죠?
Do you know who this is?
제가 그 카터 대통령 얼마 전이었죠? 대통령.
There's Clinton, Mr. President, former President Clinton, and then
뉴욕 타임스에서
Mrs. Clinton.
이제 인터뷰를 한
And New York Times did an interview.
대통령이 이 바로 그런 그 마이 피라미드 또는
The President Clinton
시행할 때 대통령
was the president when the
본인이
pyramid
그 스토리의 희생양이었던 것 같아요.
was,
뭐냐면 고기 얼마나
promoted.
자기 말로. 그다음에 와인 좋아했어요.
And
좋아했어요.
the President Clinton liked the meat, he liked the wine.
생활을 알아요, 잘 알아요. 그런데 어느 날 이제 대통령직이 끝난 다음에 심장마비가 여러 번 왔어요.
But he had a couple of heart attacks after he finished his terms.
바이패스도 했고 그다음에 또 스탠트도.
He put the stents on.
읽으면서 이분이 대통령이 아니었어요. 돌아가셨어요.
And if he was not a president, he probably passed away already. Because a lot of the top class, doctors was treating him with him.
스마트하다고 제가 생각하는 게 자기의 과오를 알아요.
But I think he's smart because he knows what he did wrong. When government promoted the food pyramid.
그랬더니 고기도 끊고 했더니 20.
So he cut down on the meat, he became vegetarian, and he lost more than 20 pounds of weight.
The China Study라고 하는 이 책을 읽고 제가 결심하게 됐다고.
And he said, the President Clinton said he read the book, The China Study, and it changed his thoughts, and he was able to change his diet. But this book, don't buy this book, because this is really boring book.
1980년대 들어서
So it's the study from 1983 to 2003
어떻게 해서 국민들이
and study by the Oxford and Cornell universities together.
거기에 원인이 있다라고 생각을 하고
And there is a correlation between the food and the health.
그래가지고 그 프로젝트는 돈이 많이 들고 하기 때문에 미국 의회에다가 그거를 신청을 해요.
So they had a project. It was costing a lot, to do this project. So they asked for funding from the Congress. The Congress rejected the funding. The Congress didn't allow this project, the study.
미국 정부가 주도하던 하기 시작하던 그 피라미드하고 너무 다 대치된.
Because the study will, contraindicate the food pyramid that was promoted by the U.S. government. So they, go to the China, and they were able to do the study in China instead. For 20 years, what they eat and what type of disease will occur from the food they eat. So they wanted to know the correlation between the food and the health. And even for me, the book is really boring. But there's the conclusion in one sentence. If you eat meat, these disease and cancer will occur a lot more. That's the conclusion of the study. Especially the milk will affect quite a bit. That project will is that the right? Is that the study right? And I was started reading the Bible, and then the Genesis chapter 1 verse 29 came into my mind.
라이브스라고 하는 저건 이제
I recommend, this book instead of the China study, if you want to read Forks Over Knives,
가족들이
and all the family can
가족들이 함께 변해.
read together.
그러면 거기에는 했던 사람들이 자기 신
And this is a research-based documentary who's, participated in the China study.
저쪽에 유럽에서는
How about Europe?
말 그대로 음식과 질병의 상관관계를
They also studied in Europe the correlation between the food and the health.
유럽 전역에 23개 센터를 건립하고요.
And 10 European countries participated, and they built 23 centers. Just by building the centers, it took about 6 years. And from 2000, the papers started to come out,
지금도 추적 검사하고 있습니다.
and they're still following up with the study.
제가 즐겨 이용하는 그 미국 정부의 의학 도서관입니다.
This is the internet, the library of medicine.
이런 논문들
And if you write, search term, European prospective investigation into cancer and nutrition, and then this, a lot of results comes out every year. The papers, studies goes up.
논문들 중에 한 가지만 제가 오늘
I want to show you one of those.
과일 야채를 먹으면 먹을수록 심장 마비, 즉 관상동맥
Fruit and vegetable intake and mortality from ischemic heart disease.
사람들이 이 2000년부터 시작해가지고 8년 동안 52만 명 중에 심장마비 생기는
So for 8 years,
근데 그 사람들은
they
과연
followed
뭘
about
먹고
31.
왔는가? 안 걸리는 사람들은 과연 왜 안 걸리는지, 뭘 먹고 있는지
310,000 people.
그랬을 때 결론은 그겁니다.
And the
과일, 야채를
conclusion
먹으면 먹을수록
is more fruits and vegetables you take.
gram으로 표시 80g을
So 80 gram is one serving of fruit or vegetables.
뭐 중간 거 한 개 정도.
And if you
하루에
eat one
먹을
serving
거다
of vegetables,
먹을 때마다 심장 마비로 죽을 떨어진다.
the rate of heart disease goes down 4% if you eat one serving.
먹느냐 안 먹느냐 단순 비교가 아니에요. 고기만 주식으로 사람과 채식을 주식으로 하는 사람을 비교한 게 아니에요.
This is not, the comparison between the vegetarian and meatarian.
이 사람들이 야채를 그만큼
But even if you eat meat, if you eat more vegetables with it,
점점 역으로 떨어지는 거예요.
the rate of occurrence of the heart disease goes down.
과일 야채를 먹으면 먹을수록
So that means there is the healing or preventing gene in the fruits or
바로
vegetables.
이거죠. 아까 말씀드린 대로 좋은 식생활로 인해서 이미 켜져 있는 유전자들.
So because of the good habit, good eating habit, good nutritions,
이런 야채 과일을 먹을수록 그 유전자는 다시 또 꺼져요.
so that will turn off the genes that you already have that can cause the disease.
이제 여러분들 중에 눈빛이 나는 분들이 잘 됐다. 그럼 그렇지. 나는 고기 계속 먹고.
So then you may think, I'm just going to still eat meat and then maybe eat more vegetables or fruits with it.
좋은 음식에는 그냥 단순히 그 음식을 먹으면 병에 안 걸린다는
So good
뜻이 아니고
food, by having that food,
이미 우리가 어떤 이유로든
it has the ability
스트레스라든지
to heal and prevent the disease.
계속 시작하는데 그 유전자들을 계속 준다 이겁니다.
So by
그러면 얼마나
having vegetables and fruits, it will turn off
그래서
those
야채
genes
과일이
that can
과연
cause
뭔데 이렇게
the issues.
나를 살게 해줄까? 이런 생각을 하셔야 될 거 아니에요? 생각. 제가 이제 그 생활 습관을 고치자는 강의가 제그 뼈대라면 거기에 이제 살을 붙여가는데 그 제임스 클리어라고 하는 Atomic Habit.
And there's Atomic Habits, the title by James Clear.
굉장히 여러분들이 좋아하시고.
And I think you will really like it. This is one of the graph on the book.
습관을 1%씩 만들어 간다면 어떻게 되냐 하면 우리의 건강 인자는 그런 식으로 굉장히 더디게 나빠.
So if you increase, 1% of bad habits,
나쁜 행
your good gene will slowly
안 걸리니까.
go bad.
그런데 문제는 평생 죽을 때까지 영원히 안 걸리는 게 아니고 언젠가는 아무리 조금씩 낮아져도
But it will, get into the disease eventually.
그게 언제인지는 몰라요.
You don't know when it is.
반면에 여러분들이 1%씩 좋은 습관을 만들기 시작하면
But if you start building a good habits, like 1% at a time,
기하급수로
the
이 차이가 과연 뭔가 이거
probability of not getting the disease just goes up
좋은 습관에 있고
significantly.
나쁜 습관의 원인이 있다면 그게가 대칭이어야죠. 이해가 되시죠? 나쁜 습관은 1% 하면 건강이 1% 나빠져야 돼요. 이게 아니잖아. 1%가 아니에요. 굉장히 천천히 나빠져요. 0.001%에 따라. 왜 그럴까를 생각을 했는데 그건 바로 이런 우리가 평소에 먹는 좋은 음식 내 유전자를 보호해 주는 거예요. 그런 메커니즘을 여러분들이 잘 하십시오. 그렇다면 무엇이 야채 과일에 있는 그 무엇이
To think about that mechanism.
건강을 지키는가? 과학자들이 그것을 연구했고 그 물질을 파이토케미칼이라고 부르죠.
So the scientists studied that, and they call that phytochemicals.
하나 둘 발견할 때는 과학자들이 발견한 사람이 이름을 붙이고 하고
And when they studied these phytochemicals,
이름들이 많이 나오죠.
they started naming it.
과일이나 야채 색깔별로 다른 파이토케미칼. 제가 15년 전에
So it has various names.
시작했을 때 파이토케미칼의 숫자가 800에서 900개 가까이 됐어요.
There are about 800 to 900 phytochemicals.
15년이 지난 최근에는
That was 15 years ago. But now
13만 개 이름을 어떻게
it's about 130,000.
이제 이름을 못 져요. 그래서 그냥 통틀어서 파이토케미칼스라고.
So you can't name them anymore because there are so many of them.
플랜트 안에 있는 어떤 케미칼이 이 논문에서 알기 쉽게 설명한 것처럼 우리가 살다 보면 알게 모르게 방사선도 그리고 그다음에 운동
And the cyto means plant.
우리 삶이 건강하지가 못해요. 스트레스도 받고 밤낮 제대로 안 살고
So
음식도 먹고 해서
our life,
유전자의 변이가 오고 암에도 걸릴
as the
텐데
paper clearly explaining, living our lives, we're unknowingly exposed to radiation and suffer from a lack of experience. We don't get enough sunlight, and our lives are unhealthy. We get stressed and don't live a regular life. It prevents gene mutations and cancer, which can result from eating bad food, and it also prevents accelerated aging. It blocks it right in the middle like this. As seen in the EPIC study earlier, even among meat eaters, the more vegetables they eat, the probability of dying from a heart attack goes down. This cytochemicals present factors in healing and prevention. In fact, if you look up papers on cytochemicals, you will find they do so many things: anti-cancer, anti-inflammatory, anti-aging. It naturally improves emotions. So I more study these things, I more revisit Genesis 1:29. I revisited it and reread it. The more I read it, the more I realize there's a tremendous messaging in it. It's not just about eating this and living healthily. Let me share a brief story. When I lived in Korea, I was, so to speak, a meat lover, someone who loves steak as much as I do. Coming to America is truly a blessing. When I come, I search the restaurants. Where's the best steakhouse in the city? All the other professors just hang out together and go to one restaurant, and I slip away and go find a steakhouse by myself. And once there was a conference in Chicago, there's this restaurant that I supposedly the most famous steakhouse in Chicago downtown. I ran and I went there by myself, and I went in, a waiter came out. How can I help you? Did you make a reservation? And I didn't. Then they said they were very sorry, but they didn't have any seats. So I told them, I actually came all the way from Korea to eat these. So waiter suddenly became, I guess, flustered. He said that actually our booking usually ends a few years ago. So they are booked like a couple years ahead. Some people do it, but most bookings end at least 3 months in advance. He was trying to comfort me. As the conversation went back and forth, the manager came and said, "What's the matter?" So I said the same thing. I came from Korea because I wanted to eat the steak that you have. They said there were no seat available. The waiter hesitated for a second while doing this and then pulled me inside. Where did he take me? To his office. He had him sit in the seat, took my order, and had it delivered to me. That's how much I love steak. So you understand, right? So after I came to Vancouver and started living here while giving this health lectures, while accepting this message, I'm experiencing an internal dilemma. I loved steak so much, not just like it, but I loved it. How can I tell you all not to eat meat? I can't do that. But then I started to worry. I was worried. If it were now, I would have simply prayed and finished. But back then, I probably didn't even pray like that, so I worried. Then one day, like a thunderbolt strikes me, like the thought of it. So try eating your vegetable first. After you tried it, you can decide whether to cut back on steak or not. Someone had that thought earlier. Even if you eat meat, eating plenty of vegetables and fruits reduce the probability of dying from a heart attack. So let's start with that. And now eating a lot of vegetables and fruits, start, chewing them for a long time because my habits weren't changing. I talked to my wife and asked her to monitor my chewing, also pointing out the number of times as we continue doing this, our habits gradually begin to change. One day, another day, our neighbors were having a barbecue that would have been about 3 years ago. The smell was so good. The smell became repulsive. It was just one day, and then suddenly happened. Why am I like this? And the meat in our freezer and refrigerator is starting to run out, and we stop buying new meat. When I say things like this, some people always ask me, Dr. Son, so do you don't eat meat? If you give it to me, I will enjoy it. I just don't go out of, my way to eat the meat. You understand, right? Why is that? Because the vegetables are so delicious. Actually, I usually do bibimbap or something like that, the Korean dishes with vegetables. I try not to put any red pepper paste in that at all, because the flavor that comes from each and every vegetables, the taste that comes from chewing a long time, it's so good.
사랑하는 걸 먼저 해야
Because the taste is good, I want to feel the taste more, so that's why I don't put like red paste in it.
즐거운 마음으로 잘 먹는 거에 포커.
So I used to like salivate when I thought about eating steaks. So I tell my patients this, everyone,
그게 감사.
men sometimes have affairs, but if you love your wife, you won't see other women, right?
그건 따라오는 결과지. 그게
You should love your wife first. Don't,
고기 얼마든지 드세요.
not having an affair is not the main goal. What I mean is focus on enjoying eating vegetables and fruits with a joyful heart. It's not an obligation. Start eating with a joyful heart and gratitude. If you feel grateful for it, then what about meat? You will naturally dislike it.
사실은
That's a consequence, not the goal. Not eating meat is not the goal.
먹이로
Eat as much meat as you want.
6년 동안 먹고 살아야.
I've been invited to a house now, and a doctor friend of mine invited me, saying he's good at making steak, and he was so excited to cook it. Would I say, no to him?
수명이 점점 짧아지나요? 물론 짧아질 수 있겠죠. 다른 요인 때문에. 최소한 음식 때문에.
The interesting fact is that God didn't give this only to humans, but He gave green grass as a food to the animals as well. And for the 6,000 years since then, animals have been eating grass to live.
사랑을 잊었어요.
One day, animals went on strike. They don't ask us to give them strike, do they? Animals that eat like that, animals don't have those kind of disease.
많지 않은 관계로 이제 빨리빨리 끝내.
If the lifespan of animals is the lifespan of animals getting shorter?
이 사람들이
Of course, it could be shortened due to the other factors, but at least you won't die of food poisoning. Only humans, humans playing tricks with indulging the taste, they've forgotten, rules about the wives.
태어날 때 여러분들 아기들이 두 가지 방법으로 태어나죠.
The people, including myself, used to think these,
그
germs.
아이들의 운명이 어떻게 바뀌는지에 대한 과학과 의사들의 어마어마하게 많아요.
When we were born, babies are born in these two ways, right? One is a C-section, and then one is a natural delivery.
왜 그런지 몰라요.
The destiny of those children, there are a tremendous number of papers by pediatricians on how that changes. In other words, children born with C-section tends to be more weak. They're prone to infections and have many autoimmune diseases. I don't know why that is. While searching for the cause, this is what was discovered. Babies born through normal delivery pass through their mother's birth canal, and for as long as several hours, how much are you struggling with that? The mother is struggling, the baby doesn't need to hold its breath anymore. They swallow all the secretion inside. It all goes into the nose and mouth. But in the mother's birth canal, the most important bacteria is lactobacillus. That's what goes into the baby first. Baby live in a sterile state while in the womb. For 10 months, coming into this world, the first thing they encounter is a good bacteria, good kind of bacteria. If you meet a good friend, you can follow that good friend to Gangnam. It's the same thing. The children have a high probability of living healthily because they encountered good bacteria and are supported by it. On the other hand, which bacteria will reach a baby born with C-section first? Gynecologists maintain a sterile environment until they finish the C-section, the doctor, and deliver the baby. And this is given to the baby is given to the nurse in the newborn nursery. And the moment it's handed over to the nurse, although they wear gloves, they're wearing not the sterile glove. So Staphylococcus, the bacteria, goes to the baby first in that case. So they go down to a different path of health. That's what I'm talking about, Do they drink milk? It's one or the other, right? Depending on that balance, the bacteria start to flourish. Of course, as we become adults, the bacteria changes depending on what we eat. So since that paper come out, many papers which I've omitted due to time constrictions have shown that all sorts of disease are either caused or not caused by these bacteria. In 2010, when I started health lecture, I wondered what could be in these vegetables and fruits. It's a fiber. Why fiber is good for health? It's a representative paper I found while searching for that paper. Looking at these nutritions, I still don't quite understand. Perhaps that fiber isn't absorbed into our bodies and maybe it slows down the absorption of other high-calorie things. I made this assumption, speculated. It wasn't certain, but then in the same paper, it came out just 6 years later, the journal, the same topic, looking at the paper, fiber is food for good bacteria. Food for good bacteria, the fiber. So sometimes you might think that what are you going to eat first? Number one, if I eat vegetable and fruits, they have a lot of phytochemicals, so I should eat that. But even phytochemicals, even those don't directly act on our bodies like this. The most representative phytochemical is saponin. Saponin is in red ginseng, red ginseng. So it's known to have anti-cancer effect. Then these pharmaceutical companies make saffron capsules. How many do you think they will sell if we make them? So this preliminary study, they recruited a healthy individual and had them take red ginseng. And then they measured the saponin levels in the blood. In first experiment, they fed the person red ginseng, but saponin isn't showing up in the blood. How can this be? What's going on? Look at it. And it turns out that we don't utilize this saponin. The good bacteria in our body consume the saponin. Then it creates a very small amount of chemicals. Those bacteria do. The substance has an anti-cancer effect. So those vegetables, the fibers, saffrons, not necessarily good for our bodies, but that's good for the good bacteria in our body. Like vitamins too. So if we don't correct that idea, we still live in for ourselves and end up chasing this rainbow. So we don't have much time, but we'll try to finish up quickly here. So I encourage you to revisit the YouTube recording later. The scientists also, regarding this belly fat, comes to obesity, we all approach it with the concept of calories. We need to exercise as much as you eat. There's no concept more absurd than this. We'll talk about this again tomorrow, but ultimately, even losing weight can be achieved by creating good bacteria, which will help you lose weight. It's about activating metabolism and maximizing the effect of insulin. Even patients with depressions, when they see the stool of someone who is mentally bright, there's talk that bad bacteria that don't come out in the stool are present. As I mentioned earlier, if you don't chew your vegetables and fruits for a long time, you absolutely cannot taste them. A prime example is like brown rice. You have to chew brown rice for a long time to get to the inside the carbohydrates, our saliva, will combine with amylase and become glucose, which can, give you the sugary taste. Not only that, all vegetables and fruits, when you chew it for a long time, the bacteria that consume those tiny particles immediately creates a certain substance. The thesis of this paper that is created a subtle flavor is like taking elementary school mathematics, 1 plus 1 equals 2, right? Instead of that, I want you to think about some complex questions about our brain now. So inside that brain, there's a barrier that prevents anything from easily passing through, right? And it does pass through the blood. It acts as a filter. It even communicates with the bacteria in your colon. What I mean is that the communication means exchanging information, and our emotions affect the bacteria. Affect which bacteria reproduces well. Some bacteria can be suppressed. On the other hand, some bacteria can make us feel very good and make us depressed. They influence each other. In fact, many papers discuss how bacteria in the colon and small intestines affect serotonin, like norepinephrine or dopamine. Our pleasure, our sensation of pleasure means the brain produces more hormones that gives us feeling of stability and security. So far, we've talked about neurotransmitter, which we thought were produced in the brain, but actually more of them are produced in the gut. What makes them? The bacteria. Even vitamins are all made by the bacteria. So directly to the brain, the question is, who should feed those germs that can even, the bacteria that can control the brain? There's a long-running program, the documentary program, the Living Forever. So they go to the Okinawa, Japan. It was a longevity. The people live long there. But the PDs and the filming crew goes and come back empty-handed at first. No matter how you look at it, it's it's indifferent from other society of Japan. Nothing is different, even in terms of food. What Japanese people eat, they eat at the Okinawa people eat the same. But since they came all the way there, they filmed and then go, and they discovered while editing this. In Japan, I studied Japanese culture a lot, and I observed the elderly people eating. It's truly one ceremony. Japanese people sit with their leg crossed and chatting and eating. Maybe some younger generation do. But adults, the older people, they absolutely not do that. They keep the eating as a ceremony. They have a good posture when they eat. And after they cook their own food, they say thank you to themselves. This is like a Japanese religion. Everything is a god. They are polytheistic. Every object is God. To put it simply, the food they are eating is also God. Each grain of rice is a god in Japan. Beans are also all gods. So what are they doing now? They're eating God. They're greeting the rice, saying thank you for allowing me to live healthily by eating you. That's their religion. That's praying.
토쿠가와 이 사람은 일본을
Tokugawa Ieyasu
하고 셋째라고 나옵니다. 이 왕이라고 할 수 있어요. 쇼군이죠.
He was one of the
이
shogun.
쇼군이 가지고 있던 생각이 있었어요.
As a
일본에서
philosophy
내려온
they had,
다신교 그런 당신들이 먹는
the shogun had a
여러분들의
philosophy.
신을 망동 48번씩
The shogun of polytheistic religion that came from Japan,
종들도 신하들도
they say food you are eating is like eating your guts. Don't be frivolous or swallow it carelessly. So they say to chew it at least 48 times before swallowing.
그 결과
The shogun said to their own servants and subjects,
언제까지요?
if you're caught swallowing without chewing 48 times, you're going to be fired on the spot. That's how much all the citizens emphasized. What was the result of that? As a result, Japan has longevity and become a world renowned country for longevity. Until when? Until the Second World War. Before Japan's defeat, after Japan's defeat, the whole country was devastated by two atomic bombs. They didn't procure all those war funds, and the people were completely impoverished. And they rose again from that. How do you think people ate? Were they sitting there chewing 48 times? No. What came out was udon, udon. Now all Japan's road networks are connected through the station. It's even more station than the subways in our country. So I always get off at the station and go to and from work, and in front of the station, there's always a udon place. And I grab udon for breakfast there. And I also grab udon for dinner before heading home, working day and night. How do I eat that udon? Eating stand up. There's no place to sit. You just drink it, you just drink the noodle. As a result, Japan has stomach cancer become a kingdom of stomach cancer. Do you understand it? And it became the country with the highest rate of dementia suddenly without chewing. So ultimately, Japan dominates the global endoscopy market. Endoscopes were invented in Germany, but Japan commercialized them. Now all Japanese companies manufacture and sell endoscopes like Pentax, Minolta. Many companies, mostly Japanese, and among my mentors, those who are good at endoscopy are 100% people who went to Japan and learned. It's how much of a kingdom of stomach cancer it has become. What kind of car it is? Are you chewing? So, all you don't have much time, people rewatch this YouTube video and think about it again. A person went to hell in a dream. When he went to hell, the people were emaciated. They were skin and bones with only police remaining. He saw that they had large spoons attached to their hands. They couldn't remove them, scooping rice from afar with that and trying to put it in your mouth, but none of them goes in. A person in the heaven had a dream. The same condition, people are cheerful, joking, laughing. And how are they eating? The person across from them is feeding them, each other. Do you understand the concept is different? How I eat and how I stay healthy is that idea that will lead you to hell. What am I going to do by eating this? Good energy for living for myself, to those energies. Like you're chewing food for your beloved children, like feeding them a baby food. So you have to eat balanced fruits with different colors. and you
concentration.
chew well
우리는 뭐를 내
and
입맛을
eat
쏙 해야 돼.
as raw as possible.
어쨌든
And
오늘
also
날
with a
이거를 좀
happy mind.
마지막 이제 몇 기장 안 남았습니다. 현대로 갈수록 그래도 운동기구가 있고 뭘 어떻게 해야지 건강하게 살 수 있다는 정보가 유튜브에서는 그렇게 넘쳐나는데 우리의
And we only have just a few pages left.
오른쪽으로 왜 그래요? 너무
So-
많이 운동
As the countries more developed, which picture was it reflects more?
메타볼리즘은 뭐냐면
Is it
우리가
because
먹은
eating too
음식이
much
아무리
and you don't
많든
exercise?
그거를 핸들링할 수 있어야 돼. 그래가지고 그걸 저장을 해야 돼요. 우리는 며칠 안 먹어도 살 수 있잖아요. 그 저장을 어디다 해요? 간 또는 그
The basic metabolism in our body, what metabolism is, no matter how much food you eat, you have to be able to handle it. So you need to store it somewhere. We can survive for a few days without eating, right? Where do you save that? The liver,
반면에 우리의 삶은 신진대사가
pancreas, and other organs help with that process.
신진대사가
The metabolism is highest in the morning. The metabolism almost disappears in the evening. On the other hand, when our metabolism is active, we starve.
하루 종일
There's no metabolism at all when things starts to accumulate from that
당신은
point.
감히 그거마저 못 퀄리티 오브 라이프가 어디 몸은 저렇게 나 과연 이게 왜
Where's the quality of life in that?
피지올로지 몸이 그렇게
So falling
만들어졌고
into depression and the body deteriorating like that, why is that? It's because we're not living according to our philosophy. In other words, what I'm saying is that there is a timing for eating food. Our bodies are made that way. We live on Earth, right? On Earth. Earth belongs to the solar system. The movement of the sun, it revolves around us. We're orbiting the sun. As day and night changes due to the sun's movement, all our physiological functions and hormones change accordingly. I'll talk about this on Saturday morning when we talk about sleep. I'll explain it more in details then. The conclusion is that your body changes depending on when you mainly eat your meals. It's not about eating a lot or eating a little. Exercising and not exercising, and of course nutritions play a role, but they're not the direct cause. Take a look at this paper and you will all, it's a remarkable paper for tonight. What I mean is, I mentioned earlier, some people from birth, all parents are like this. The children's are like too. The people you know, they live slightly unhealthy lives. This BMI, the body mass index, easily exceeds 30. Just like that, called polygenic. The poly means many. The genic refers to genetics or inherited traits. Congenitally inherited obesity factors, a great number of people. This top line marked as high here is quite unfair that the lives can worsen with only slight difficulties because of their parents. But let's think about other way around. These people, mealtime, when do they mainly eat their stable food? If they eat a lot in the morning, then the time they eat in a day, so the average as close to daytime as possible, your BMI drops sharply. Their parents were skinny from birth. The person was also skinny.
잘 사용하면 어마어마하게 좋은 일이 일어나고 잘못 사용하면 유전자를 탓할 게 아니라 내가 그걸
So
어떻게
the gene is double-edged sword. If you use it well, incredibly good things happen. And very bad
우리의
things happen if you use it
건강을
incorrectly.
좌우하는 가지 중에 무엇을 어떻게 먹는가를 세 줄로 제가 요약을 하고
I'm going to summarize it in three things.
창세기 1장 20절
food.
저는 그것 때문에 하나님을 진짜 신뢰하게 됐다고 제가 고백을 했어요. 그냥 과학적으로
There's
너무나
Genesis
많은 원인들이
1:29.
최근에 21세기 들어와서 다 뒷받침되니까 그 채식의 놀라운 효과를 보고 오히려 감사하고 덥고 채식을
The
먹을 수 있는
first
내가 너무
is eating vegetables, of being vegetarian
두
with
번째는
thankful heart.
우리가 음식을 먹는 건 나를 위해 먹는 거예요.
And when we eat food, secondly, when we eat food, it's not for me, it's for the bacteria, the good bacteria
세 가지
inside me.
이 건강 습관을 여러분 나를 위해서 한다. 배우자를 위해서
So don't think about it for your body.
나를 위해서 한다고 하면 배우자를 생각해서 건강하게 살아서 암에 안 걸림으로 내가 암에 안 걸림으로 심장마비에 안 걸림으로
Trying
내
to
와이프에게 내 남편에게
think about your
얘기 안
spouse.
하겠다라고 생각.
So when you eat,
그런 식으로 우리 인생이 돌아가게 돼 있어요. 그렇게 창조주가 만들어 놨고 우리 신체는 그렇게 돌아가니까. 마지막으로 지구에서 살고
Lastly,
있는 우리는 태양의 움직임에 따라서
so we are living by solar system.
가장 많이
So eat more for the breakfast and then less for the
이 세 가지
dinner.
메시지를 하시면서
So think about those three things.
이렇게 말도 많고 살도 많은 음식에 관한 거는 여러분들 유튜브 보세요.
But if you look into the YouTube channels, there are a lot of things about food.
거기에는 결단코 여러분들을 건강으로 해결해 줄 수. 예수님은
But if you look at those only, it won't lead you to the right
그래서
path.
그분이 뭘 알겠어요? 뭘 보셨겠어요? 사람들이 뭘 먹어야지 건강. 그 당시에도
He just came to the earth and lived just like human. What would he saw?
아니야 이랬는데 당연히 목숨이 음식보다 중요하죠. 맥락을
What did Jesus say to that?
뭐 당연한 말씀을 하고 계시니까 제가 영어 성경으로 읽어보니까
It says Matthew 6:25, is not the life more than the food?
사는 게 먹고 살라고 사는 그러니까 사는 왜 우리는 건강하게 살아야 되고 건강을 위해서 우리의 삶을 바꾸고 습관을 바꿔야 될까요? 그런가요? 거기에는 다 남을 위한 거예요. 남을 위해서 사는 그 마음을
We should live healthily, and why should we change our lives for the sake of our health?
이 철학적인 개념을 여러분들이
It's all for others, for others.
곰곰이 생각해 보시고 내일 하겠습니다. 내일은
And we really hope to see you all again tomorrow.
기도하고 마칠까요?